don't plan for our death very often. We think we're going to live forever as long as we eat well and exercise and all that stuff. I want to be the next to go, and I want to be ready, and I want to give my children a soft landing. And I think that if we deny death, we are not going to be prepared for death, and the aftermath then will be on the shoulders of our children.
Hello, kia ora. Welcome back. Another episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. I'm your host, Kirsty Salisbury, and I'm here to chat with us all about things life, death, experiences in between, all these amazing topics. Today, I'm chatting with Dr. Kimberly Harms. She has a strong background in law. However, she's been doing some amazing work. She's all dedicated to being a grief counsellor. She's a death doula, an end-of-life doula, and we've talked about that quite a bit on the show. She's offering support and guidance to individuals navigating challenging life transitions. So this includes both physical, but also spiritual. It includes everything when we're talking about death and dying. She's really helping to open up the conversation around death and dying, and she's on a mission to help people consider their death before it comes, to be prepared to leave a great legacy for the people who are left behind. So excited by her work. It's very, very similar to some of the things I've been doing. I'm really keen to get into this conversation. So Dr. Kimberly Harms, welcome along to Let's Talk Near Death.
Thank you so much, Christy. It's so great to be here.
I'm so curious how you ended up in this work, because it's a question I often get as well, is how do you end up focusing about death and dying and all of these things?
Well, I had a number of big major catastrophic losses in my life, people who died. The last one was my husband, and he passed away 4 years ago. And when he passed away, I kind of found myself in that interesting place between menopause and death. And I thought, well, what do I do now?
Oh,
My
not
husband's gone.
fun.
Not fun. I've been taking care of him. I'm 68. How much time do I have left? I started looking. Oh my goodness, what do I want to do? How do I want to proceed with this part of my life? And I realized that there aren't a lot of workbooks around that just kind of help you, move forward, right? We don't plan for our death very often, at least not until we know it's coming, like in the
Yeah.
next couple of months. We don't like to. We think we're going to live forever as long as we eat well and exercise and all that stuff, but we don't. Nobody does. So I started researching. What should I do now? As I was researching, I found the work fascinating. I thought, first of all, what legacy do I leave now? And when I talk about legacy, I'm talking about things like love, which is the most important one, education for our kids. I like to do art. There's so many things we can pass on, so many legacies we can pass on to our family members or the people around us. So I started focusing on that. And then I became a death doula because I realized that I really needed to know more about what happens after I graduate from life. So I became a death doula. And then I realized that there's a lot of things. I'm the last one. I'm the next to go, I hope. I lost a son, so I don't want anyone to go out of order again. I want to be the next to go. And I want to be ready, and I want to give my children a soft landing. And I think that if we deny death, we are not going to be prepared for death. And the aftermath then will be on the shoulders of our children
Oh,
because we didn't
yep,
prepare.
yep.
So my book is, I wrote a book in three parts. First one, legacy. Second one, death and dying. Talks about what everybody, lots of different people think about death and dying because there are a lot of different thoughts out there. And then the things that we need to do to give our children that soft landing, get everything in order so that when we go, it'll be a much easier task for them, and they can manage their grief without all of the conflict and confusion and so on that goes on when we don't have everything put together.
Wow. There's a lot of loss that you've brought up there, Kim. There's a lot of you talking about your son, your husband. Oh,
And
it's heavy. I feel that I just want to take a moment to actually acknowledge that.
yeah.
You're absolutely right. So even my own personal story is losing someone and nothing's really prepared, and just watching the family go through that, or not even watching, being a part of that, trying to fix things and arrange things, and you really just want to be in a space where you can grieve, but you've got paperwork and you've got insurance claims and you've got things to do, and it really does just I think, change the way that you can go through the death. It changes the process. It changes the way that we can grieve. And yeah, I like how you talk about having a soft landing.
Mhm. Mhm. I have
Wow.
everything. I have everything, and in fact, I have it right here because I had to get some information up. I have everything is right in here, and I
My
have
legacy journal.
it's all in page protectors, everything they're going to need. My
Yep.
will, my letter of intent. I wrote them love letters because the most famous love letter of all time was written by Saint Valentine to be delivered after his death. And look at the impact that had. So I have
Wow.
Valentine's in there for my family. I have legacy letters in there that talks about my family history, so they'll know. So that when I die, instead of rummaging through my things trying to find all the papers they need, all the papers will be in one spot. And which I hope when they're going through those, they'll say, "Oh, mom must have loved us because she put this all together for us," which is true. But just in case, because you can't take anything for granted, they have those love letters in there that reinforces how much I love
Mm.
them, and so they'll know that when they're going through. So I think that will help them have that softer landing.
Yeah, yeah, and I love the term softer landing. You've talked, you at one point you mentioned art, so you've written your love letters, talked about art,
Mhm.
and my mind just thought there are so many things we can do to leave messages of love or to share a little bit of who we are with our children, with future generations who may not get the chance to meet us. There's so much we can do, and yet the majority of us are walking around pretending we're not going to die.
Absolutely.
So,
And
yeah, none of us are getting out of here alive. I'll just put that out there. 100% death rate so far. Why do you think well, when I say we're all walking around, possibly you and I are a little bit different because we're working in this field and like we talk about death all the time. It's our work, it's our focus, it's who we are. But why do you think it is that so many people walk around not acknowledging they're going to die, pretending they're going to live forever, not creating what you call the soft landing for our family and our loved ones when we're gone?
some people are afraid of death, and many people are. In fact, I think until my son died, I was afraid of death too, to a degree. I'm not anymore. I happen to have six grandchildren, which
Oh, lovely.
I need to be here, as long as possible to leave legacy for them, right? But
Yeah.
I think many of us are just afraid, and we're afraid of the unknown. And I think that also we are procrastinators by nature. I certainly am a procrastinator by nature. And so putting that off, oh, I'm not gonna die tomorrow. I can do that tomorrow. I can do that tomorrow. I can do that tomorrow. And the reason I think it's so critical to do it now is that when you are in a situation where maybe you have a terminal illness, so many other emotions come into play.
Mm.
And many times I just talked with a family who had a mother who was dying of a terminal diagnosis. She was not expected to live more than a couple of weeks, but they were so afraid to approach her with any of these things that she had a lot of property in her name, and it was a disaster after she died. But they were afraid to approach her because they felt that if they did, they would be admitting to her that they expected her to die. That relationship of talking to people about their death when they're dying might be uncomfortable. He had gotten all that stuff done before, when they're going through this emotional time, they wouldn't have had to worry about it. So that's why I think it's just important to get it done now. Just get it
Yeah.
done now. Have it done. There's such a sense of peace for me knowing that if I get hit by a truck, my kids are going to be taken care of. They know where everything is. And I think I just like to encourage people. I know it's something, sometimes it's something that people don't like to talk about, but I really want to encourage people to think about their families and show them enough love to get this together as soon as
Wow.
possible.
Yeah, show them enough love. Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
like that. Yeah, it's something we are afraid of because none of us know what it's like. If we believe that we've been here before or that we've died before, then that's a little bit different because we might have certain beliefs that make it all okay, but we don't know what it's going to be like. So we're afraid of death generally. It's a little bit like going to the dentist. If you don't know what they're going to do, you're a little bit anxious, you're a little bit afraid. I
Yes.
am. But yeah, we need to be having this conversation. I'm
Yeah.
curious because I see so many people and I work with a lot of people and I'm sharing the same message out there, Kim, of we need to think about these things. We need to prepare. I've also got a little book which people can write down everything. And it's not just the boring stuff. I say boring, it's important, but it's not just the wishes and the where's your will, who's it with, who's your accountant, your lawyer, what are all these things? What do we need to do as soon as you die? But it brings in, tell us your favorite memories in life. What is the funnest thing that you've done? What pushed you out of your comfort zone? Bringing the stories in, because I think also quite often you'll go to a funeral
Mhm.
and you hear these stories, these amazing stories of the life that the person lived. And I've had times where I've sat there gone, I didn't even know this person. I had no idea that they'd done that. I had no idea that that's who they were, because we all know different versions of people. We don't get the full picture because it's what we relate about, what we connect with. I don't want people to come to my funeral and learn stories for the first time, or I don't want people to miss out on having those stories. So it's about collecting the fun stuff as well as the paperwork stuff as we go. I'm curious to know, in your work, do you feel like generationally it's different? Do you think we're becoming more open to talking about death and dying these days?
I don't think we are. I think, in fact, I think we are almost in more denial because of the wellness issues that are going, which is great. Again, more wellness is more legacy. So stay well. But I think that with that, how many times have, in my life, many times I've seen an elderly person, maybe in their 90s, who were very frail, and when they die, which would be just a natural kind of thing, many people are blaming, well, why'd you do that? Why my husband, for instance, did the wonderful thing of having his healthcare directive and saying very definitely he wanted to die at home. And he had a very peaceful death. It was a beautiful death at home. But there were still people in the families, particularly those in the medical field, who said, "Well, if you get him into the hospital, they can intubate him and they can pump, they can pump out his lungs, or they can do this, they can do that." And that's what he did not want to have happen. So he
Mm,
gave me the gift of letting me know and letting everybody know in writing with his signature he did not want to go into a hospital. But sometimes families will argue over those things. So, and my husband was young; he was 70, so I can see that happening. But even in people that are very elderly, and maybe very frail, there's quite frequently you'll see conflict among the families about how they died, when
yeah.
in fact it was just okay, it was their time. And in my husband's case, it definitely was his time. He had skirted death many times before, and his body just, there was nothing left to him, and so it was his time, and it was easier to grieve that than it would be had you had guilt or questions or conflict. That just complicates that grief so much when you have those other things involved, because then you're grieving the relationship of the person that you're having a conflict with, along with the death of the person that you love. So it's like a mess.
Oh,
So don't do that. Don't do that to your
yeah.
kids.
Oh, that does sound really messy. Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, when we've got something in writing that's come from the person themselves, quite often at the end of life, they're not able to communicate so much what they want, or yeah, I've seen conflict in families a lot where people want different things for the person who's actually dying. So just to have it written out, it's simple things like, yeah, do you want to die in a hospital or at home or some other option? There's lots of clinics and there's lots of options of where you can die. This is assuming that there's a probably an illness or something that's happening. Like obviously you can't choose in a sudden experience. Do you want to be resuscitated? A lot of people, like you've touched on, a lot of people will go to the nth degree to keep life going. And especially for, yeah, the elderly. Sometimes it breaks my heart because I think they probably just want to die. Why do we hang on to life? Why do you think we do that? Why do we see death as a bit of a failure?
Well, I think that you should take a look at what different people believe about death. It's divided into different categories. I happen to have a faith, and I think when I go, I'll see my husband, my son, my mother, I'll see them all again. So I'll have a reunion on the other side. I don't want to go quite yet because I want to leave legacy for my grandkids. So I see it in a more positive way. Maybe that's why I'm not afraid. There are some people that believe either death is the end. There's some people that believe that then their
Mm.
existence is gone completely. And then some people believe there might be some punishment at the end. And of course you can kind of see where that might be a little scary. I had a dear friend who passed away, and she passed away angry. She was angry that she was dying, and
Oh.
I felt so sad for her. Um, I just felt so sad for her because she was angry as she was going. She was angry. So I'm hoping, because you never know what's going to happen to you later. But I'm hoping when I go in a way that my children realize that I'm ready to go and it's peaceful. Because I think when you have that anger, it does it does reflect to the other members of your family. I mean,
Mm,
it's something that makes it harder for them to grieve as well when they see that you're struggling with it.
mm, mm. I think so. So you also are a death doula, end of life doula. So you're working with individuals and families of people who are dying?
I do most of the things that I'm working on right now is the legacy portion. So I help people write their legacy letters. Help them write journals. I help them do videos. It's so easy to do a video. You just take your phone. I have a whole list of questions in my book about what questions you ask. You take your phone, you ask questions, or you have my favorite kind is when you have a family member interviewing you, because you can have that back and forth, and then the
Oh,
family member
yeah.
might remember a funny story, because what they're interested in really, it's not whether you've won a Nobel Prize or Academy Award or whatever. They want to know the fun details, who you are, what you liked, the funny stories, when you really screwed up. Like I have plenty of those,
I love
funny
those.
things when you just messed up, and you have to be able to laugh at yourself, which I think is a legacy to help us laugh at ourselves. Life is so much more enjoyable when we can laugh at ourselves, because usually, for me anyway, there's a lot to laugh at. So we can, and I think that's part of what is helping the grieving process. If they then can watch, their loved one talking about their lives, knowing that you're going to watch this after they die, knowing that
Mm,
you're preparing this because you know they're going to die, and I think that helps them.
mm.
And I know it works to talk to them, because I had one of my little grandchildren, little Heidi, was at the table a few months ago, and she said, "Nana," and I said, "Yeah," and she said, "Well, if what happened to Pop Pop happens to you," and I said, "Oh, do you mean if I were to die?" She goes, "Yeah, yeah, Nana, if you were to die," and I said, "Okay, Heidi, yes, if I were to die." She goes, "Well, if you were to die, can we still go to Disney World?" And I thought, yes,
Oh,
absolutely. I
yeah.
want you to have joy in your life. Every time you have joy, you're honoring me. And so then after that, I just my daughter's also my attorney. I have written to her to include to take money aside in my will and put it towards a trip for all of them to go to Disney World, so that they can go
Oh,
on me and know that that's
yeah.
how they celebrate my life, is having a good time.
And that's true legacy right there, because the memories they make, the photos they take, everything that carries on after you're gone, that's going to be so incredible for them as a family. And even years to come, the memories of that. I love it. I love it. The legacy can be anything, can't it? And
Yes.
I do you think it's fair to say that we probably leave legacy regardless of whether we plan for that or not?
Yes, and I talk in my book about positive legacies. And I think that if you think about living with your legacy in mind, what you're passing on, you live in a whole different way. There's a lot of joy in that, because
Mm,
sometimes we all kind of fall into living with, oh, what the world's given to me. And, I'm old now, and I just had a new hip, and I've had some arthritis, and I've got this and I've got that. And, my grandchildren are growing up, and they're not as excited. They still love their Nana, but they don't get so excited as they did when they were
mm.
younger. All these things that we kind of live with, and we can take in, and it can turn into something negative. But if you live with, what am I offering them? It makes such a difference. It makes such a difference, because what happens is, when you do things for other people, or you pass things on for other people, it's crazy, because whatever love you're passing on to them comes right back at you just by you passing it on. It doesn't even matter how they react to it, although that does help. But it's an amazing thing how, when you start to live with your legacy in mind, rather than thinking just what the world's giving you, you live a much more joyful life. And living a joyful life is so much better than living one
Oh,
of grief and sadness. I mean, right?
yeah. Yeah. If we can have fun, then why not have fun? I always think of life as a bit of a playground,
Yes.
and we have different experiences. And one experience might be the swings. And I go, oh, I want to go see what the slide's like. So I'll go try something else. I'm always trying new things. And yeah, I want to have all the experiences. I want to try the whole playground. And
Yeah.
sure, I might fall off and break something, and that's going to be okay. That's one of the learning times. But yeah, we've got to have fun. And I've talked before within the podcast of I think sometimes we just take this life a little seriously. And I get it because this life is so serious. This life is so real. But yeah, on the other side, I go, this life is so not real and so not important. Like you, I have beliefs that there is an afterlife. I'm really curious as well, talking with people. Quite often, I'm asked different questions and I run different groups. And I think it's probably some of the groups where there's a younger crowd. So people who aren't retired yet, who maybe haven't got family of their own, and they're thinking, how do how do I talk to my family about death and dying if your parents are potentially getting elderly and they're quite shut down? Because I think within the work that I do, I attract people that are a little bit more open to having the conversations.
Mhm. I think that it's important to know that everyone's going to respond differently. I have two daughters.
Yeah,
I've got one. I can talk to her about anything and she's ready to go. Okay, when I die, do this and this and this. And she's okay, we're going to do that. And then I have the other one that says, oh, mom, I don't want to think about you're going to die. I don't want you to do
yeah,
that. And so, but
yeah,
I talk to both of them. And what I tend to do is I write a lot down. I'll text both of them. For instance, I just texted them, say, I'm going to add this trip to Disney World or to wherever you want, a vacation that everybody takes together when I'm gone, because who knows how old they're going to be, right? They might want to go somewhere else.
yeah.
But I want to leave this here, and I kind of joked. Now, don't tell them all about it because I don't want them to want me to go. I want them to
I
still want
wish
me
you'd
here. I
just
don't want
die
them
because I
to
want to go to
just go.
Disneyland.
Yeah, I want to go on a trip. Come on, hurry up. So I don't want them to
Oh,
do that.
rough.
But I communicate with both of them. The one that's we'll talk about it. We'll kind of, okay, mom, we'll do that. The other one has got the information. So I think planning a family meeting, I tend to talk to them about can we talk about a future planning for the future meeting, because that's kind of what we're doing, and and then bring them together and let them both see what's going on so there's no surprises, because I think one of the
Mm,
major causes of conflict after we're gone are the surprises. So if there's say one of your children is taking care of you for 10 years, before you
mm.
die, you might want to leave something special for them. Then explain it in a letter of intent. Make sure they know this is going to happen so that when you die, they're all expecting it to be divided up equally, and then one person gets something different. It's not a
Oh,
surprise. I think preventing that surprise is very important.
yeah, yeah. I do think that's important because it might be seen as favoritism or any, it just creates conflict, future conflict, which you don't, that's a legacy right there. Whether you intend, you're probably intending to set aside something to say thank you and I really appreciated all the help you gave me, but actually it's just a trigger for conflict. So there's a lot to think about, isn't there?
Yes,
What
there is.
about when potential? So I'm thinking you've talked to your situation about you're talking to your daughters and they're responding differently. What about it when it's, say it was your daughters and you were very close to talking about death, but you're the one that's unwell? Well, you're not, but let's just say an example where the children were the ones that were open to it. How do you talk
Mhm.
about death when the person who's actually unwell and potentially dying quite soon is so closed and shut down and doesn't want to plan, doesn't want to do the things that you're saying really soften that landing?
That is an issue. And I know of several cases where they don't
Yeah.
want, don't talk about, I'm not going to, don't talk about my death. I don't want to think about it. And I would really recommend just writing them a love letter, a Valentine, a love letter saying, I love you so much. And boy, I'm so glad you're my mom. But we really kind of need to know these things. It's just important to have this on the side, even not even addressing that they're going to soon, but this is just really important for us to know so that we can maintain a healthy relationship. And I think that's the key, because sometimes I think I've heard a number of people say, well, they're going to get the money, they can figure it out. I'm not going to, I'm just going to go and they'll work it out. Well, it's not really the money that's a big thing in these situations, it's a relationship. So if you can just say, it would just be great for you to get this together so that our relationships can stay strong after you're gone because we love you so much. And so I think even a letters sometimes are nice because you can read it and think about it and read it again and think about it. And also when you're in that heightened emotional state, sometimes people will say things to you that come across differently than they intend,
Mm,
because you're in that, you're like, oh, what do you mean? And so if it's a nice, thoughtful letter that's been thought over and sent with love, I think that's one of the best things you can do to someone that doesn't want to talk about it.
still so hard though, isn't it? Because it
Mhm.
changes the relationship to a degree, and they're still gonna, they could be alive for another 5 years or so. And if you're helping them, oh, I don't know, it's not as straightforward as we make it sound. And I'm just thinking of a couple of families that I've worked with where this has been the case. And yeah, what do you do? How do you approach the subject when they really want to shut it down and they get almost angry
Right.
about you trying to make the situation better in the long run? Yeah. It's such a personal thing, isn't it, death? It's such a
Yes.
personal thing.
And
We,
oh, I'm sorry. It's the same situation as when somebody needs to move to a place for their safety if they can no longer
oh,
stay.
yes, yes. So have you got, what have you seen there? Is it the same level of maybe they need to go into a care facility or something like that? Because they feel stripped of life when actually it's giving them more safety, more life, more ability to try things. But
Right.
it's really, I feel like maybe the world seems to be getting smaller for them, and that's hard to take. That's hard to accept.
Yes. And I'm at that, I'm at 68. And so I see people around me that are at that point. And it is very difficult and it is very hard. And I think that the important thing is to remember when you're talking about these things, do it with love, do it with safety in mind, do what you can to be there to help them. Because many times we feel we're like I'm a widow. Many of us are widows. 75% of women that are married are going to be widows. So we're alone many times. And
Mm.
the thought of moving our stuff, whoa, that's another thing because we got
Oh,
our
I
stuff.
know.
The stuff has emotional attachments. We have to
Yeah.
learn to get rid of that stuff because it's so much better when we do. But it's hard to talk to us about it. But just be very, very gentle and understanding and try not to be condescending. That's kind of a thing we old folk don't really like when our children are condescending to us. So you just have to just be the way, just do it in a gentle manner. And
Yeah.
if they can get help from people their own age, I know our church does that. Our church helps people to kind of learn when it's time, prepare for a time to move out. Let them know that the natural transition now is because we're living longer and
Mm,
we live longer in a time where we're not so healthy. So therefore, we're probably going to need to downsize into something smaller that we can manage. And if,
mm.
if they can hear it from outside of their family too, that's very helpful
Yeah,
for them.
I think so. But you've touched on a really good point there, because not only are you downsizing in terms of the size of the place, usually, not always, but people quite often go from the big four-bedroom family home with 25 years of stuff, and we collect a lot of stuff, down to a one or two bedroom unit, maybe within a village or something. But the point that you touch on is it's not just the space, it's the things that have the emotional connection, the memories, and hard to let go of all of that. I mean, sure, there's a lot of clutter stuff we can get rid of, but there's still going to be a huge amount of emotional connection to clothing and to memories and photos and objects. Maybe you went traveling and bought a souvenir, or something happened and I don't know. I don't know. We've all got them, right? We all have little things that are special to us. So I think it's a really big topic. Death just seems like a life and death seems quite little, like flip side of a coin.
Mhm.
But the topic is enormous and preparing for it is enormous.
Yes, yes, yes. I just had to down. We had a cabin. My husband and I built this beautiful, our dream home on a lake, in Minnesota,
Oh,
and um, and then he died.
oh
So
no.
our dream retirement home wasn't as much fun with just me, and it was
Oh,
big and it was expensive to maintain, and it had a lot of stuff in it. And
mm,
my daughter and son-in-law, the one that talks about death, had told us before my husband died that we weren't allowed to die until we cleaned out that garage there. And we couldn't, but my husband didn't listen to him and then he left it with me. So I'm going to talk to
oh,
him about that when I get up there. We're going to have a little word. So I had to get rid of all the
oh,
stuff. I had sold it and got rid of all the stuff. And instead of going up to the lake by myself, I'm going to rent a small apartment. In fact, I'm going this Friday down in Kansas City where my other three grandchildren are. So I'm going to have a little place here and a little place there, and I'll go back and forth so I can
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
bring be with my grandchildren on a regular basis on both sides. But downsizing from that big cabin with all the stuff was extremely painful. I have to say, I
Mm,
can't say it was easy, but so freeing now. It's wonderful now once you get done with it.
yeah.
It's a painful experience going through it, but once you get done with it, oh, it's so freeing. And I forgot what I had. The problem is I would go through this stuff and there are some things I had completely forgotten about that I hadn't used in years. And I come up in the box and I go, I love this. And my daughter would say, when's the last time you used it, Mom? Oh,
Yeah. It hasn't been
it
looked at for
hasn't like
6 years, but you're connected to it. I get it.
connected to it. But I got help. What I did is I hired a company. I just
Oh,
paid
yes,
them the
good.
money to come and help me do it. And it was great because they would stand right next to me and they go, we'd have going to Kansas City, staying here, or the giveaway pile. And so I would sit there and I look at how much room was in here and how much room was in there, and wasn't much. And so I would just say, okay, giveaway. And as soon as I said it, they would snatch it from my hand and put it in the giveaway
Go
pile
on,
so
you
that I
can't
could.
change your mind.
Yes, it was, and I needed that. That's what now
Yeah.
some people are better. I'm not good at that. I'm not, I like to keep things, but I needed that. So I think finding the system that works for you. And if you're like me and you get stuck clinging to things, get some help. Just get
Yeah.
some help and have them just help you get rid of stuff.
I think so. I think so. Stuff is important, but stuff is noise to me. I'm a bit of a minimalist, so it's probably quite easy for me to say that, but I find things noisy and bother me. So I think once we can turn the noise down, we can have a clearer, better space. I don't know.
Well, no,
Um,
that's more, I think that's a healthier attitude because my husband had seven chainsaws in our garage.
oh,
Yes, he
oh,
would couldn't find one because it was way back there. So he'd go get another one. And so we
oh.
had a lot of nieces and nephews, and so they all got a chainsaw in his memory. So, you do
That's
what you got to
legacy
do.
right there.
That was it. Yeah. So it worked out in that case. But we tend to get attached, and it's not good. I think
Yeah.
your minimalist is much healthier.
Yeah, I think so. And you're talking about, you've mentioned chainsaws. I remember when my father died, we had so much stuff. He had a workshop in the garage and all these little things. And looking at it, and I go, I don't even know what that is to be able to list that for sale because it's still in a box, of course.
Mhm.
Um, Perfectly good items, just don't even know what they are. So it's not even that we're trying to clear out the clutter, we're clearing out someone else's clutter as well, which isn't connected to us. We don't know what the things are. It's a whole nother level of going through that process. And I think it makes it so much harder. Yeah, if we can just sort out things before we go. And I think that's the positive of downsizing. I don't know. I'm one of these people. I'm like, sign me up. I want to go in the village. I want to go into the retirement villages because I just think they're beautiful. They've got the pool and you don't have to maintain it. And I'm just assuming I'm going to be fully able-bodied when I get to the age when I can go into one. You've got all the groups, you've got the cafe. I don't know what they're like there, but here they're like resorts. They're absolutely amazing. Sign me up and I'll do the decluttering to get back into a smaller space to have
Yeah.
that carefree living. And I think that's the benefit is we do get rid of a lot as we go, which is all part of this process of softening the landing.
Yes. Because it many times one child is more responsible than the rest
Oh,
for cleaning
always.
things out. It's the one that lives closer, or for whatever reason, they are
Yeah.
the one that have the responsibility. And that causes resentment quite frequently that
Yeah.
I have to do all this and you're down there. I know with my daughters, now I'll have two places, so they'll be equally responsible. But I also put in my will money put aside for a company to come in, and I said, you guys go in, you take what you want, and the company will come in and clean it all out. And
Oh,
so
you're
I put
amazing.
that in there so they don't have to do that. But I will have downsized. I have a small apartment now and then a small apartment there. So it won't be that much. And I'm not collecting like I used to because I've learned my lesson. I wish I'd learned my lesson, 20 years ago. I'd have a lot more from
Yeah.
my man. I couldn't go into a fancy village, if I had just saved up and not bought that stuff that I'm, giving away for free pretty much now. So
Yeah, the stuff that really says it. You touch on a good point there, resentment, because I know a lot of people feel this. There is always something we can do to even up the balance for that. So, one example is one of my close friends actually at the moment has been dealing with some elderly parents and just, everything that comes with that, daily hospital visits, the parking for the hospital, the driving, just working full time and spending every other moment trying to do things for everybody. The other family members live out of town, so they literally can't do anything. They live, a flight away. They can't do anything. But what they did do is offer to pay for a cleaner for the one who's doing all the work to come in, or you could get meals delivered, or just something to lighten the load and rebalance things so that it's not all on one person. Or if it is all on one person, that one person feels that they've got a part, someone on the side who's, there's all in the team, just one of them can't be in the right location. And I was like, that is so cool. That is so generous because it's really easy to go, well, I can't do anything because I'm not close by, or I don't have the relationship or whatever. But hiring a cleaner so that when they come home at night, they don't have to worry about cleaning the house or meals. They don't have to, every night there's going to be dinner because it's quite often to then, dinner's usually the first thing to go get takeaway or pick something up on the way home. And then that's not where you can show up optimally for the people that need you. So there's always something we can do to support family members. And yeah, I just wanted to put that in there because I think it's so cool to rebalance and not have that resentment, because that resentment is a legacy as well. And then that can go on for years and years.
Yes, it can. And I think people
Yeah.
just want to know that they're respected for what they're doing and
Yeah,
appreciated.
that
So
is
you're still
acknowledged,
like
right?
way to show that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, yeah, I loved it. I was like, oh, that's amazing. So think about that, people. In terms of death, dying, preparing people for the inevitable, sometimes I hear, oh, but I'm still young. Yes, we have freak accidents.
Mhm.
Do you think, see, I'm of the belief that we probably need to do something regardless of our age, regardless
Yes.
whether we've got a partner, kids, whatever. We need to have something out there saying what we want for end of life.
I think anyone that's purchased life insurance, and many young families, we got life insurance when our family was young. So if you're purchasing life insurance, you should also be getting these things all together and provide that emotional life insurance for your family so that if something were to happen, again, that softer landing would be there for the kids, and your spouse wouldn't have to go and search through all your papers and try to find all these things. And you can write those little love letters to your family. And it would be
Yeah.
fun to come back 30 years later, because you need to update these things maybe once every
See, I was
six
going to
months.
touch on
Go
that.
through it.
Yeah.
But you could update like I would keep the love letters, the one that you wrote when they were 5 or 6, and then the one I mean, wouldn't that be wonderful at the end of your life to have 9 or 10 letters that you've written throughout the ages and how much you love your child and for
Oh,
them to go through
yeah.
that. So start early and you'll have more letters. So I think that would be a great thing to do.
Yeah, I like this. Yeah, that would be really cool to look back and read them. What a special moment. I like the idea of you hanging on to them as well, because I've written letters. I've written letters to my daughter and to my husband and things like that. And then often you find them years later,
Mhm.
they might not be in the same condition.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
So,
I think I like to write letters for when you get married or when you graduate, but you can't put those in your legacy binder. You need to give those to someone that you can trust to hand out if that happens, because you don't want to have letters in there that say, "Oh, when you get married, this and this and this," and then they don't get married or they don't have children, or
oh,
something else happens. So you
yeah.
have them available so that if that happens, somebody can give that to them on their wedding day or on their graduation day or something like that. So there's letters that are also really great to write, and gifts, in
Mm,
fact, for the first Christmas afterwards. I think putting aside some little gifts that are wrapped up for them for Christmas are also kind of a fun thing to do as well. But you want to make sure that it's handed to someone that can check to make sure these things happen before you
yeah.
before you give them out.
Yeah, yeah, so much could happen because life, a lot happens in life. Yeah, I really like it. I've got a friend who paints pictures for people and she's a beautiful artist. It's not like her full-time thing, but for birthdays, she'll paint the card. For presence, she'll paint on a canvas. And that's another thing to leave, another legacy piece. There's so much that we can do, so much. Music, songs, writing a song, recording a piece. Yeah, there's something for all of us. There really is. What do you think are some of the biggest, toughest questions that we need to be asking around death and dying?
Well, I had somebody ask me a question that caught me off guard. I was doing a live podcast and he was in the audience and he had just lost his child too, and I had lost his son, and we talked about that. And he said to me, and I expressed that I have a faith, and he said to me, "Well, what happens if half an hour before you die, you find out that all those things you're thinking about just a lot of bunk and that you were wrong the whole time and you're just going to be gone? What'll happen to you then?" And I kind of sat back and thought, whoa. And it was coming from a place of pain for him because he had just lost his son. And I've been there. And I thought about it and I thought, well, in my situation, my faith has given me a lot of joy in my life. And my faith has kind of led me on a path that I felt was a good path in my life. So I would probably, if that happened in half an hour before I died, just go, dang, I too bad I'm not going to go there, but I'm so glad I had a faith to get me through this life to that point. So that was a really tough question. It was probably one of the toughest questions that he asked. And of course, that especially I had two suicides, my mother and my son. Where are they? Where are they now? Where is their spirit? Are they gone? Are they in heaven, or where are they? Those are the really tough questions when somebody dies, and the ones that kind of uh, stay in your soul for a long period of time. I was very fortunate that I had some things happen shortly after my mother and my son died that really gave me, a lot of faith that they were in a good place. But those are the hard questions to answer sometimes.
Mm, mm. And because faith as well is so unique, it's so personal.
Yes.
Yep, a lot can happen in those final moments.
Mhm.
A lot. I don't necessarily believe that we have a moment of death. I think there's some transition phase where we're between different worlds or between death and life, call it whatever you like. Yeah. But we're never going to know, are we? We're never going to know. I don't necessarily know that there's things as wrong
Right.
or mistakes, because like you said, if your faith was wrong, it's gotten you through your whole life, brought you much joy, all of these things, just like experiences as well. I don't necessarily think that things are mistakes. They might not be the wisest choices, but they get us to where we need to be. As long as our intention's good, as long as our heart is in the right place, we're not intentionally trying to do wrong decisions. It's
Right.
all part of the learning process. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think too, whether you believe that you go on for eternity or whether life stops at death, no matter what, you want to leave a good legacy behind. You want your life to matter, for your life to matter, leaving that good legacy is very, very important.
Mm.
Leaving it behind to the people that you love. So living with that legacy in mind is important no matter what your belief system is.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's also important, and it's another hard question, to talk about what are your belief systems? Do you have a faith? Do you believe that we go on? Do you believe that that's it? It's just nothing. There's no right or wrong answer. It's about what we truly believe. But
Right,
again, having that conversation, I think, is so important to
I
help in
agree.
those final moments.
Right. When I started writing the book, I went to a writers conference and started asking people, what do you think happens when you die? So we were at a big table with people that had very different beliefs than me. I
Mm.
grew up in the Midwest, I've got kind of, certain, I've been part of three different religions. I'm a Christian, and it doesn't matter what denomination to me. But anyway, I was out there and there were people that had very unusual beliefs that I'd never heard of before. And it was a fascinating discussion and quite freeing to go around, and everyone told what they thought was going to happen when they die. And there was no judgment. Nobody was
Yeah.
said, "Oh, well, you're wrong." It's like, wow, we all just said, wow, that's fascinating. Wow, wow, wow. And so it was really a freeing discussion because it's one of those things that is kind of don't like to talk about. People don't like to talk about. But in reality, as long as you talk about it, non-judgmentally, for the purpose of understanding them rather than judging them. Wow, it can be fun. It actually, we had fun
Yeah.
sitting around telling everyone how we thought what we thought was going to happen when we die. There was one woman that really believed that she was going to go to Saturn and this was going to happen and that was going to happen. I had never heard those things. And I was just amazed. And I thought, well, we'll all find out at some point in time. We'll all be sitting around, probably,
Yeah.
hopefully, if it does go on beyond, we'll be sitting around, oh, you were right about that. And
Yeah,
this group
yeah.
about that, and that group was right about that.
What a
But it's
beautiful
fascinating.
conversation. That would just, yeah, I'd love to have been in on that. Oh my goodness, I love it. I love to hear people's opinions and ideas and perspectives.
Yeah.
And I just find it fascinating because we are all different. I love it. Okay, in terms of preparing for your own death, what would you say is the number one thing that we can do to soften the landing for those around us?
The number one thing I think that you can do is make sure you have that binder, some sort of a binder or something put together to to be prepared so they know where everything is, your will, all of those things. You have it together. It's with the love letters in it. Make sure you put those love letters in there. You have it together for your child or your children so that you can kind of feel like, okay, my graduate assignment is my finals are completed. To me, it's like my final exam. This is my final exam. I can graduate now because my final exam is completed. And make sure everybody in your family knows how much you love them and tell them as much as you can before you go, but also
Mhm.
so after you go, it'll still be there. But I think just showing your love, that's the most important thing you do. And one of the ways to show that is just have that final binder put together. So when you go, you just tell them where, binder's there, everything's ready. And it just make it a lot easier for them.
Good to go. I feel like it would make your death easier because you'd have peace of mind. You wouldn't be stressing. Hear a lot of stories, and I know one story in particular where people are still trying to do this and they're on their deathbed. We have deathbed wills, we have deathbed, paperwork basically, and they're trying to fill in the binder while they're dying. And I just think that's so sad because life is so precious right up to those moments, the very last moment. And we can avoid all that. We can make it a softer landing. Dr. Kimberly Harms, thank you so much. I feel very inspired to go and revisit it. Like you said, we need to revisit. I've got my book. I'll put a little link to that as well in the notes. Is your one available if people want to get
Oh
hold
yes,
of your binder?
if you just go on my website, which is drkimberlyharms.com, you can even get a free download of 4 steps to a family conversation. And
Oh,
the
I
link
love
to my
it.
book is there. The link to my book is there too. So you can get the book, the link. I'm giving an online course too, just to help everyone because the biggest problem is procrastination. I think we all know we really should be doing this, but we
Yeah.
procrastinate. So I'm trying to do everything I can to help people get through this process.
Yeah, I think it's just so, so important. So if you're listening, you don't have anything planned, prepared, please, please, please go and start to think about your death, start to prepare things. And, fingers crossed, you might have to go back and revisit it. So I did mine quite a while ago, need to go back and revisit that. So you've got me all inspired. I think this is probably one of the most important conversations we can have ever
Thank you.
because none of us are getting out of here alive. I love your work. I love what you're doing. Obviously, I'm a passionate believer that this is important. So, Kimberly, thank you so, so much.